this way.
All right. Good afternoon, New Bedford Guide, Fall River reporter, and Fall River Guide followers out there. I have a special guest this afternoon doing an interview with Fall River Police Chief Jeffrey Cardoza. He was what has it been, Chief? About 6 weeks now or so. You've been sworn in.
About that, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe people don't know who you are. Why don't you tell people who you are and kind of where you're from and how you've moved through the ranks in the Fall River Police Department.
Well, thank you, Mike, for having me on this afternoon. And as you said, I'm the new police chief here in Fall River, and I've been here about 5 or 6 weeks, and certainly had my hands full. Fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of great people. So I'm in my 30th year. I was also fortunate enough to move around the building. I have a lot of what I call diversity, work diversity, as far as that's concerned, and just trying to tackle a lot of the issues that are going on nationally and with COVID and protests and demonstrations, and we're working hard from the youngest patrolman to the staff that surrounds me every day.
So you kind of jumped right into the hot topic right now, which is gun violence in Fall River. So when you held your press conference, well, why don't we start with that? Why did you and the mayor and the DA Quinn kind of hold your press conference last week?
Well, the mayor initially reached out to me and thought it was a good idea. I would imagine as the mayor, he's getting some phone calls, just like I got some phone calls. People are concerned about what was going on, and as well as we're concerned. It certainly is alarming, that type of surge in gun violence. And as you can see, Mike, it's something that's unfortunately occurring on a national level. I think at the press conference, you and I had a kind of a little bit of a back and forth. I think it was your question about, why is this happening? And I think there's some truth to the fact that some of the population, if you will, just feel like there's a lack of respect for law enforcement, a lack of respect for community, a lack of respect for their neighborhoods, and they're just going to do what they want to do, a brazenness, if you will.
And I think a lot of the people that you've arrested are out of Fall River. They don't live in Fall River. They come from other inside and maybe doing drug dealing, that kind of stuff.
I don't want to say a lot. Too many. I get a lot of feedback from the detectives, whether it's on the narcotic side or the major crime side, and I'm going to put it right out there. They're telling me that a lot of these people that are involved in the violence, whether it's they're present for the violence and not cooperating, or they're actively involved in the violence, whether it's they're the victim or they're a suspect, are from out of town, and it can be very frustrating. And I think you heard not only Tom Quinn echo that, but also the mayor. The majority of people that live in Fall River are good, hardworking people. I've said it over and over again, and it's frustrating when someone comes from another community intent on doing something nefarious. It's a frustrating thing for the detectives and myself.
Yeah. So the stats. The mayor handed out some stats, and it was roughly the gun firing from May and June of last year is about 100% over year from this. And I know July is getting off to a bad start as well. Sunday, you had 19 shots fired. We're going to post that link in the article. And I don't know if you can give me an update on that incident on Sunday night, but it was 3 houses and 3 vehicles that were shot up with 19 shell casings. I guess I'll ask is that multiple shooters or 19 shell casings? Sounds like multiple shooters or an assault rifle.
Mike, I don't want to get into too many details. The detectives have told me that they do not feel that the cars or the houses were the target. So you can read between the lines on that, but I don't want to get into too much. I don't want to, confirm anything at this point. It's a fluid investigation. I just got done speaking with Captain Gorvin from the Major Crimes Division, and they're making a little bit of headway on it. But he tells me that at this point, they don't feel that the cars or the houses that were hit by the gunfire were actually the target of the gunfire, which is a whole another realm of concerns for me. We have the brazenness of this, where they're firing shots and they're missing their intended target, and they're hitting houses, whether they're occupied or not. I actually lose sleep over these things. So we're very concerned.
So there was last Tuesday, it wasn't a gun death, but it was actually a beaten death of Jesse Ousley of Westport. I believe he was beaten in Fall River and he died in Rhode Island. was a lot of misinformation on social media. But what can you tell me about an event that you know of right now?
Very little. We have a MOU with the district attorney where we allow his office to do any type of unattended death or a death that involves suspected foul play. He handles all the media inquiries. I can tell you that it has not been ruled a homicide at this point, and that that's something that's being worked on as we speak. And I'll let any further comment come from Greg Milioti on that.
Yeah, we're not going to put out any of the misinformation that was out there at this time. I'm going to move on to a topic over the weekend, we put out an article talking about Mayor Coogan shifting funds from the police department to other things. And I know it's money that is supposedly it is left over from fiscal year that wasn't spent. And a lot of the reasoning was COVID-19. But I just got an email we got a letter from the police union saying that they don't want $480,000 to lease the police department at a time when we have high amount of shooting in Fall River, equipment that needs to be replaced, like cars that maybe have like over 200,000 miles. Can you explain, does the police department need that $480,000? Can they let that go to other things?
Well, in all fairness to the mayor, he didn't shift it. I mean, at the end of the fiscal year, the money all goes back to what I assume is the general fund, or it goes back to the city. That's just the rule. It wasn't hey, I'm going to take this money from you and I'm going to fill a gap somewhere else. So I just want to be clear on that. But because of we did a very close analysis today, and because of COVID, there were some things that didn't get spent. I'll give you an example. In the expense side of it, guys didn't go to court. And when guys didn't go to court, they're not getting overtime because the courthouse is closed. So that particular purse, if you will, in the police budget stayed filled with quite a bit of money. Because of the lack of arrests, and we feed we have a jail here, and we actually feed the people that are arrested. The purse that involves the purchasing of food stayed with quite a bit of money in it. So there were a bunch of things, as well as unfilled positions. The mayor and his staff, when I first became the chief, said we just don't know where the state's going to go with budgets and funding and 9C cuts. So we're just not going to fill any positions right now because I don't want to fill a position and have to lay somebody off. However, I did make a pitch to he and Mary Sahadi about putting. I think we put 4 in, 2 dropped out, and now we're putting 3 more in August. So we're getting 5. He gave me 5 positions. He's being more than reasonable as far as filling positions goes. So at the end of this fiscal year, some money went back, and I've had some conversations with the mayor and some of the council, and they're going to wait for free cash to be certified. And they're going to look to bring some of that money back to us. It was nothing nefarious, if you will, or trying to take money from public safety. I think it's just there was a congruence of events involving COVID and a lot of different things that caused us not to be able to spend some of that money.
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up right here. So this is what we put out, and this is, you can see right here, this is what the city council is taking up tonight, and it shows money coming from salaries, expenses, but this line right here, police salaries, $280,000. And we wrote the article from to. So and I don't want to get you into the politics of it, but the mayor does have the option to send it back to the police or put it to this community maintenance or insurance. And that's what we're addressing on that. But I don't want to get you into politics. I hate getting the police and fire into the politics and getting in trouble with this.
And I don't want to get into the politics of it. I can just tell you that, yes, there were some unfilled positions, but I think his intention was to, not to bring people or, put people in an academy. It's also important to mention, Mike, that the academies, not just the recruit academies, but the 911 academies for dispatches were shut down. So we weren't able to send people even if the mayor said to me, okay, yeah, you can send 6 guys to an academy. Well, the academy was shut down due to COVID. So it was a lot of different events, I think, that put us in a situation where we weren't prepared to spend some of that money.
Yeah, what's the total?
I certainly hope it comes back, and based on what I'm being told, some of that is going to happen.
What's the complement of Fall River police officers right now, like total force?
I believe the complement right now, it changes. We have people that are sometimes out on comp time for retirements, but we're around totally sworn. We're 221 officers.
Yeah, and I looked it up. I asked Chief Cadero in New Bedford. They're at 248. So the Fall River Police Department does seem a little understaffed, and that's why we kind of bring those things to the forefront, because I really would. I think people in Fall River would like to see the money go back to the police so they can feel they're fully staffed, and especially a city that has been a higher crime rate than the city of New Bedford. So with a lower police force and a higher crime rate, I hope the police can get their full funding. But I'll move on from this topic unless you have something to say on that.
No, I'm good, Mike. Thanks.
Okay, so a big controversy going on is obviously we all know the tragedy that struck George Floyd in Minneapolis, and now it seems like every police department is being punished for that. Massachusetts, just today, the Senate approved the reform of the police in Massachusetts. Now it goes to the House, and of course Baker signed it. The big issue for police, I feel, is the qualified immunity part. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, it's a big concern. It's a concern of mine as well, Mike. I want the officers to be effective. I want them to feel comfortable doing their job. So I have some concerns about the taking qualified immunity away. I've heard, I'm no expert on it, and I've heard different versions, if you will. You're taking some portions of qualified immunity away, but I could tell you that from my limited experience, I'm not an attorney, but if an officer goes way outside the scope of his duties and commits some type of civil rights violation, well, he or she would lose qualified immunity anyway. So based on my understanding, I think there was a way to get around that, if you will, for lack of a better expression. I'm concerned about it. I have been the subject of what I would call frivolous lawsuits in the past, and I certainly appreciated that that the city had provided me some type of an indemnification, if you will. So it's a concern. But no matter what the legislature decides, we're gonna follow the rules. That's what we do. That's why we took this job, and we'll move forward. We'll find a way around it. We always have.
Yeah, I'll go through some of the items. You tell me if you agree with it. Banning on chokeholds.
Yes, I am comfortable with that. Yes, we're in the process of. This is not rocket science for me, Mike. We're in the process of doing that right now in our use of force policy.
Limit use of tear gas.
I would want to hear more on that.
License all law enforcement officers and train them in history of racism.
Yeah. If you're talking about licensing, you're talking about certification or decertification with post. Yeah. Yes, I'm comfortable with that. It's been done nationally.
Yeah, when I was in the military, we had to be certified annually on things, and if you didn't qualify by the instructor, they kind of decertified you, not as a police, like as a military person, but in that area. So you couldn't actually practice that part of the. So is that kind of what?
I'd like to hear a little bit more about it. I mean, I know there's a POSA committee that they're talking about forming. I'd like to hear more about that, but I'm comfortable, and I think the majority of officers would be comfortable with certification.
Okay, I know you're a busy man. I know that you got a lot to do, so I'm going to just go one last one. I found that Chief Cadero and Mayor Mitchell in New Bedford, they supported cameras on the body of police officers. It seemed to be the funding that was the lack of that moving forward. Is that kind of the same case in Fall River?
I can tell you the mayor and I have had some just preliminary discussions with the union and about starting a pilot program. They were willing to sit down and talk with us. There was not a closed door on that, and that made me feel good, to be quite frank. The mayor is in the process of trying to secure some funding for a pilot program. I will tell you, from what little I know, speaking to some of my colleagues in Providence and other agencies that have it, it's extremely expensive for a community to take that on. However, I'm a proponent of it, and I think you'll see that at some point all departments in this state will have them, and it's just a matter of finding the funding. I'd like to see some type of funding source to help us out with that.
Yeah, my opinion, I think it really protects the police in many ways, and there's no better evidence in the courts than video, right?
Oh, Mike, you're right. And if you read some of the stuff that's out there on done by PERF, Police Executive Research Forum, on body-worn cameras, the studies they've shown is that people actually will behave better. I think it's a natural thing to behave better when you know you're obviously being recorded, but it also helps the officers, and it certainly will help the prosecution of anyone.
Yeah, and I think like there's no career out there that doesn't have bad apples, and if the police have bad apples, it's good to catch them on camera, get rid of them. And then, of course, if the police can show up to a scene and have everything videotaped, then it's not your word against the officers when you go to court. You know, and that's kind of an important thing, I think.
So what we're going to do on our end is we're not going to just start this program one day. What we'll do is we'll if the union is okay with doing the pilot program, we'll convene a committee. They'll be involved because, as you know, we're a two-party state here in Massachusetts. We have to provide some type of notice. So it's something that my vision, it would involve the union, it would involve defense bar, it would involve someone from Tom Quinn's office, and we'll sit down and we'll come up with a policy that we think is good for Fall River.
Yeah, I think it's good for Fall River, and I hope that, and we're trying to reach out to the politicians because I'd hate to see funding be the reason why it doesn't happen. Because I feel like every chief I've talked to and every mayor, I haven't had a chance to ask. I think I asked Paul Coogan about that, and he was okay with it. I don't see the resistance coming from the police. Sometimes the unions, but usually it's the lack of funding, and hopefully that doesn't.
It's actually the storage. The storage of the what you've created. The video and the audio. It's extremely expensive, and I'm going to give you a figure that I heard about around 200 licenses, if you will. Is about every 5 years is about $1.5 million to $1.75 million. So that's for 5 years of having it. So although it's stretched over a 5-year period, it's still quite a bit of money. So it's certainly something I would like to see either the federal government or the state government help the communities, especially the urban communities, find the funding for those cameras. The larger departments like myself and Chief Cadero, we could use that funding.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we're now around 20-minute mark, so I figured I'd let you get back to work, Chief. So we appreciate your time and hope we can do this again in the future, kind of take some questions from some of the people in the future. And, I think it's a good thing to get the chief and the mayor and to talk to the public like this.
But glad to help anytime, Mike.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.